My name is Jodie Mitchell. I raised my son with 2 hands, a broken back, and no help from anyone. And on New Year's Eve, in the house I paid for, my daughter-in-law, Elizabeth, looked me dead in the eyes in front of a room full of people and said, "Jodie, we've decided it's time you go to a care facility. You're not contributing anything here anymore." Not contributing? I smiled, because that's what mothers do when their chest is caving in. We smile so nobody sees the wound. My son Sam stood 3 feet away, holding a glass of champagne. He didn't blink, didn't move, just stared at the floor like the carpet was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. That silence, that was the knife. The party kept going, music, laughter, the countdown clock on the TV ticking toward midnight. I excused myself quietly, walked to my room, and closed the door. I didn't cry right away. I just sat on the edge of the bed and looked around, at the walls I painted myself when we first moved in, at the window I had replaced out of my own savings when the draft got too cold one winter, at the closet where I still kept Sam's childhood drawings folded in a shoebox because I couldn't bring myself to throw them away. Then I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out an old duffel bag. I packed slow. Medication, 1 sweater, a photograph of Sam at 7 years old, gap-toothed and laughing, sitting on my shoulders at a state fair in Ohio, back when he was my whole world. Back when I believed that counted for something. I zipped the bag, stood up, took one last look at the room, then I walked out the front door without saying a word. Nobody noticed. The cold in Denver in January is a different kind of cold. It doesn't just bite, it settles into your bones like it's planning to stay. I walked 6 blocks to the bus station, dragging that bag, and the whole city was celebrating around me, fireworks cracking over the skyline, strangers hugging on street corners, horns blaring from passing cars, and I was invisible. The station was loud and too bright. I found a seat on a metal bench near the far wall and sat down. I didn't even know where I was going. I just needed somewhere to sit that wasn't that house. Then it hit me. Not the anger, the grief. I pressed my hand over my mouth and tried to hold it in, but I couldn't. My shoulders shook, my eyes burned. 34 years of sacrificing and working and loving that boy, and this is where I ended up, alone on a bench in a bus station on New Year's Eve with a duffel bag and nowhere to go. A young woman sat beside me. She didn't say anything first, just sat there. Then quietly, "Ma'am, are you okay?" Her name was Kylie Rice, and I didn't know it yet, but that question, those 4 words, were about to crack open everything my family had been hiding. I told her things I hadn't said out loud to anyone, about raising Sam alone after his father left, about working double shifts in a medical clinic for 15 years, about the house, how I didn't just help Sam buy it, I funded it, my savings, my name on documents I trusted without reading carefully because he was my son and I thought that meant something. Kylie listened without interrupting. Her jaw tightened, her eyes changed. Then she stood up, stepped a few feet away, and made a phone call. I watched her. Her voice was low but sharp. I caught fragments. "Yes, Dad, I'm sure." She came back and looked at me with an expression I didn't understand yet, like she'd been searching for something for a long time and just found it on a bench in a bus station. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said carefully, "I need you to come with me tonight because I don't think your family sent you away because you're old. I think they sent you away because you're dangerous to them. If you want to know what Kylie's father knew and what my own son had been doing behind my back for years, make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell, because what comes next, I almost didn't survive it. Kylie drove. I sat in the passenger seat with my duffel bag on my lap like a shield, watching Denver disappear behind us. She didn't push me to talk, just drove south on the highway with the heater running and the radio off. I finally asked, "Where are we going?" "My father's house, Colorado Springs, about an hour." "Why does your father want to see me?" She kept her eyes on the road, "Because he's been looking for you for a long time." I didn't know what that meant. I wasn't sure I wanted to. Lance Robertson lived in a house that sat back from the road behind a row of old pine trees. Not a mansion, not flashy, just a solid, quiet house that looked like it had been paid for honestly and taken care of carefully. He was standing on the porch when we pulled up, tall, silver at the temples, maybe late 50s. He came down the steps before I even had the door open. He stopped a few feet from me and just looked at me. "Jodie Mitchell," he said, softly, like the name meant something to him. "I don't know you," I said, and I didn't. I was certain of that. He nodded slowly. "You wouldn't remember me, but I remember you." He told me to come inside, told me he'd explain everything. I almost said no. I almost asked Kylie to drive me to a motel instead, somewhere cheap, somewhere I could figure out my next move alone. But there was something in his face, not pity, something steadier than that. So I went inside. Lance sat across from me at a kitchen table with 2 mugs of coffee and a plain brown folder between us. He told me that 22 years ago, he was a man with nothing, newly divorced, broke, working a night security job at a medical building in Denver. He got into a bad situation, medical debt, a legal threat he didn't understand, paperwork he couldn't navigate. He came to the clinic front desk desperate and barely holding together. I worked that clinic front desk for 15 years. He said, "You helped me. You didn't have to, it wasn't your job, but you sat with me for 2 hours after your shift ended, made calls, connected me to a legal aid office, and made sure I didn't fall through the cracks." I stared at him. I couldn't place the memory. I had helped so many people in that clinic. It was just what you did. You saw someone struggling and you helped them. I never thought to keep track. Lance's voice was quiet but firm. That help changed my direction entirely. I got back on my feet, built a business, built a life. He paused. "I never forgot your name, Jodie, and when Kylie called me tonight, I knew." I looked down at the coffee mug. My hands had finally stopped shaking. "That's kind," I said carefully, "but I still don't understand why I'm here." Lance pushed the folder toward me. "Because 3 weeks ago, my lawyer, Ethan, flagged something, a property transaction in Denver. Your son, Sam Mitchell, transferred a deed." I didn't touch the folder. "The house," I said flatly. "The house," he confirmed. Ethan Turner was Lance's attorney. He joined us by video call on Lance's laptop, still in a dress shirt at midnight like he'd been expecting this. He was direct, no softening it. He told me that when Sam originally purchased the property, the primary financing, 70% of the down payment, came from a joint account in my name, that my signature appeared on the original mortgage co-agreement, that legally I had a valid ownership claim on that property, and that 6 weeks ago, Sam had initiated a quiet deed transfer, removing my name from all related documentation, filing it as a correction of a clerical error. "A correction of a clerical error?" I repeated. "That's what was filed, but it wasn't a clerical error. Your name was on those documents intentionally because your credit and your savings were what made the purchase possible." I sat back in the chair. The room felt very still. I thought about Elizabeth raising that champagne glass, that smooth, sweet voice. "We've decided it's time for you to go." She didn't say that because she was tired of me being underfoot. She said it because they needed me out of that house before I found out what they'd already done to it. "There's more," Ethan said quietly. And the way he said it, the way Lance looked down at the table, I already knew this was about to get worse. Ethan didn't make me wait long. He said, "The deed transfer was only the first layer." He shared his screen, a document filled with numbers and account names I didn't fully understand, but I understood enough. Sam had taken out a second mortgage on the house 8 months ago, against my equity, without telling me, without asking me. The amount was substantial, enough to fund a business venture, Elizabeth's business venture, a boutique event planning company she'd launched quietly in the spring, all financed against a house that was half mine without my knowledge or consent. I didn't speak for a long time. Lance watched me carefully. Kylie sat beside me with her hands folded on the table like she was bracing for whatever I was about to feel. What I felt wasn't what I expected. It wasn't just anger. It was clarity. Everything lined up. The way Elizabeth had grown colder toward me over the past year. The way Sam stopped including me in household decisions. The small comments, "You should think about your future, Jodie. You can't live with us forever," that I had taken as carelessness, as thoughtlessness. It wasn't thoughtlessness. It was a plan. "How long?" I asked. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Ethan checked his notes. The second mortgage was filed 8 months ago. The deed correction was filed 6 weeks ago. Based on the timeline, I believe the decision to remove you from the property entirely was made sometime in between. While I was living in that house? While I was cooking dinner and doing laundry and staying out of their way? Nobody answered that, because there was no answer that made it better. Lance leaned forward. "Jodie, do you still have access to any of the original purchase documents? Anything from when the house was first bought?" I thought hard. "There's a lockbox," I said slowly, "at a bank branch on Colfax Avenue in Denver. I opened it years ago when Sam's father passed. I kept copies of important documents in there. Sam doesn't know about it." Lance and Ethan exchanged a look. "Then that's where we start," Ethan said. We drove to Pueblo the next morning. Lance had a secondary office there, a small space above a print shop on a quiet street where Ethan sometimes worked remotely when he was in the area. It was practical, neutral ground, away from Denver, away from Sam and Elizabeth. I sat at a desk with Ethan's laptop, and we went through everything he'd already gathered, piece by piece. Property records, bank filings, the business registration for Elizabeth's company. Lucy Barker was Ethan's paralegal. She joined us mid-morning, sharp and no-nonsense, with reading glasses pushed up on her head and a thick stack of printed records under her arm. She laid everything out on the desk like she was building a case, because she was. "Here's what we have," Lucy said, tapping each document in turn. "Co-signed mortgage, joint account contributions totaling $68,000 toward the original purchase, your name on the original deed, a deed transfer filed 6 weeks ago, removing your name, fraudulently submitted as a clerical correction." She looked up at me over her glasses. "And a second mortgage taken out against your equity without your signature or consent." "Is that enough?" I asked. "It's more than enough to file," Ethan said. "What we need are your original documents from that lockbox to strengthen the timeline, And we need to move before they realize you're not sitting in a care facility somewhere wondering what happened. I called the bank that afternoon. The branch manager confirmed my lockbox was still active, still in my name only. I told her I'd be in the next morning. When I hung up, I sat quietly for a moment in that small office above the print shop, the winter sun coming through the window at a low angle, casting long shadows across the desk. Charlize, Lance's office coordinator who had driven down from Colorado Springs to help, brought me a sandwich and set it down without a word. Just a small, quiet act of kindness from a stranger. I hadn't eaten since the night before. I picked it up and ate, and I thought about Sam at 7 years old on my shoulders at that state fair, laughing, trusting me completely, me trusting him the same way 30 years later. I wondered when that stopped being mutual. I wondered if he thought about me at all that morning, whether he noticed I was gone, whether he felt anything. Then I stopped wondering, because it didn't matter anymore what Sam felt. What mattered was what I could prove. That evening, Ethan got a call. He stepped outside, came back in 2 minutes later with his face carefully neutral, the way lawyers look when they're controlling a reaction. "What?" I said. He set his phone on the desk. "Elizabeth filed a missing person report this afternoon. For you." The room went quiet. Lucy looked up from her papers. Kylie, who had stayed close all day, straightened in her chair. I stared at Ethan. "She filed a missing person report," I repeated slowly. "This morning you were an inconvenient old woman they wanted gone. By this afternoon, they need to know exactly where you are." He looked directly at me. "Jodie, they know the lockbox exists." The missing person report wasn't about finding me. Ethan said it plainly. No softening, no legal language. "If Elizabeth locates you before we retrieve those documents, she can claim you're mentally unfit, confused, wandering. It reframes everything, makes any statement you give look unreliable, and it gives Sam grounds to petition for guardianship." I let that land. Guardianship. My own son, taking legal control of my decisions, my finances, my ability to act on anything Ethan had just spent 2 days building. Elizabeth hadn't just planned to remove me from the house, she'd planned to remove me from myself. Lance made a call that night. He knew someone at the Denver branch, not the manager, someone higher, a contact built over years of quiet, honest business. He explained the situation carefully, explained that I was the sole authorized holder of that lockbox, that there was an active legal matter, that timing was critical. The appointment was moved to first thing the following morning, private entry, side door, no record of the visit in the general system. Lucy drove me. We left Colorado Springs at 5:30 in the morning while it was still dark. I sat in the passenger seat with my duffel bag on my lap again, same as the night I walked out of my own house. But I wasn't shaking this time. I was focused. The bank branch on Colfax Avenue was quiet that early. A security guard let us in through a side entrance. The bank manager, a serious woman named Sandra who didn't ask unnecessary questions, led me to the vault herself. The lockbox was exactly where I left it. I hadn't opened it in 4 years. Inside, original mortgage documents, the joint account statements from the purchase period, a handwritten letter from the original escrow agent confirming my contribution, Sam's signature on a document acknowledging my co-ownership, and something I had completely forgotten was in there, a life insurance policy, my husband's, paid out after his death The beneficiary listed was me, but stapled behind it was a second page, an amendment filed 2 years after his death, redirecting a portion of the payout into a property trust in my name, not Sam's, not Elizabeth's, mine. I stood in that vault and read it 3 times. Lucy stood beside me, reading over my shoulder. She didn't say anything immediately. She took photos of every single page with her phone. Then she looked at me. "Ethan needs to see this right now," she said. We were back in Colorado Springs by 9 in the morning. Ethan was already at Lance's office with his laptop open and 2 phones on the desk. He read through the documents Lucy sent him on the drive back. By the time we walked through the door, his expression told me everything. "The property trust," he said, standing up. "Jodie, do you understand what this means?" "Tell me plainly," I said. "It means the house was never fully Sam's to transfer. The trust document creates a legal encumbrance on the property that predates his deed. Any transfer, any mortgage, any financial instrument attached to that property after this trust was established is legally compromised." He sat down. Elizabeth's business loan, the second mortgage, all of it was secured against an asset that wasn't fully available to secure. The room was very quiet. Lance sat back in his chair with his hands folded. Kylie stood by the window, not moving. "So, what does that mean practically?" I asked. Ethan looked at me steadily. "It means Sam and Elizabeth didn't just push you out of your home. They committed fraud, multiple counts, bank fraud, deed fraud, potentially elder financial abuse, which in Colorado carries its own criminal statute." I sat down slowly, not because I was weak, because the weight of 30 years just shifted. All that time I thought I was the burden, the woman who overstayed her welcome in a house she helped build, the mother who became inconvenient, the old woman not worth keeping. I wasn't the burden. I was the obstacle, the one thing standing between them and everything they'd quietly stolen. Ethan filed the initial legal action that afternoon, an emergency injunction to freeze any further transactions on the property, a formal challenge to the deed transfer, a notice to the bank that issued the second mortgage flagging the fraudulent collateral. He also contacted the Denver Police Department regarding the missing person report, providing my location, a statement confirming I had left voluntarily, and a letter from Lance as a witness to my condition and whereabouts. By 4 o'clock, the missing person report was closed. By 5 o'clock, Sam's phone started ringing. I know because Ethan had a process server deliver the injunction notice to the house that same afternoon. I wasn't there to see Sam's face when he opened it, but I thought about it. That evening, Lance, Kylie, Lucy, and Charlize sat in the living room of Lance's house. Nobody was celebrating. It didn't feel like that kind of moment. Lance looked at me across the room. "How are you holding up?" I thought about it honestly. I keep thinking about the photograph I packed, the one of Sam at 7 at the state fair. Nobody filled the silence. "I don't regret loving him," I said quietly. "I just wish it had been enough to make him better than this." Kylie reached over and put her hand on mine without saying anything. That was enough. 2 days later, Sam called Ethan's office directly, not to apologize, not to explain, to make an offer. Sam's offer was simple. Drop everything, sign a quiet agreement, walk away with a one-time payment of $20,000 and no further claim on the property. Ethan read it to me over the phone without inflection, professional, measured. When he finished,
I asked him to read it again, not because I didn't hear it, because I wanted to make sure I felt every word. $20,000. For $68,000 in contributions, for 15 years of double shifts at that clinic, for the jewelry I sold, for the meals I skipped, for the life insurance payout I never touched because I wanted Sam to have a foundation, for 30 years of showing up without being asked and staying without being thanked. $20,000 and disappear quietly. Jodie, Ethan said carefully, it's your decision, but I want you to understand what we're holding before you answer. I know what we're holding. Then what do you want to do? I didn't hesitate. I want to go home. Not home to that house, not to sit back on that couch like a piece of furniture nobody wanted, not to smile through dinners and disappear into hallways and pretend I didn't notice the way Elizabeth looked through me like I wasn't there. I meant home in a different sense. I meant I wanted what was mine back. All of it. Ethan Turner was precise and methodical in the way that quiet, serious lawyers are when they know they have an airtight case and they're in no rush to let the other side forget it. He rejected Sam's offer in writing within the hour. Then he filed the full claim: fraud, financial elder abuse, deed falsification, misrepresentation to a lending institution. The second mortgage flagged formally with the bank, triggering their own internal fraud review. Elizabeth's business, built on stolen equity, flagged separately. Lucy handled the documentation with the same no-nonsense efficiency she'd shown from the beginning, building the evidentiary file like she was stacking bricks. Lance covered the legal costs without being asked, and without making it feel like charity. He just told Ethan to send the invoices to his office. That was the end of that conversation. I didn't argue. I'd spent enough of my life refusing help I actually needed. The case didn't go to trial. It didn't need to. 3 weeks after Ethan filed the claim, Sam's attorney requested a settlement conference. We met in a law office in downtown Denver, neutral ground, glass conference room on the 14th floor with a view of the city I'd lived in for 30 years. I sat on one side of the table. Sam sat on the other. It was the first time I'd seen him since New Year's Eve. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, just diminished, like something had gone out of him. Elizabeth wasn't there. Her own attorney had advised her not to attend, given the fraud exposure attached to her business financing. Sam looked at me once when he sat down. Then he looked at the table. Just like New Year's Eve, just like when his wife humiliated me in front of a room full of people and he found the carpet more interesting than my face. Some things don't change. The settlement took 4 hours to negotiate. Full restoration of my name on the property deed, reimbursement of my original financial contributions with interest, a structured buyout because I didn't want to live in that house anymore, and everyone in that room knew it, at fair market value with my ownership percentage accurately reflected. The second mortgage unwound. The bank had already initiated their own fraud review, and Sam and Elizabeth's exposure there was significant and separate from anything I was pursuing. Elizabeth's business, built on stolen equity, was left to collapse under its own weight. That wasn't my doing. That was consequence. Ethan also negotiated a formal written acknowledgement. Not an apology exactly. Sam's attorney had pushed back hard on that language, but a legal admission that my contributions to the property had been accurately documented and that the deed transfer had been improperly filed. It wasn't the apology I deserved, but it was the truth on record, and sometimes that has to be enough. I walked out of that building at 6 in the evening. Denver in late January, cold and clear, the sun already low, painting the sky above the mountains that deep orange that only happens out west. Lance was waiting outside on the sidewalk, Kylie beside him. Lucy had already headed home. Charlize had sent a message that simply said, "Proud of you." I stood on that sidewalk and breathed, really breathed, the first full breath I'd taken since New Year's Eve. Lance looked at me. What now? I thought about it. I had money coming, real money, enough to start over completely, enough to choose what came next on my own terms for a very long time. I don't know yet, I said honestly, but it'll be my decision. He nodded. That was the right answer, and he knew it. Kylie hugged me, held on a second longer than necessary. I let her. I want to tell you something before I go. I didn't win because I was clever. I didn't win because I fought back fast or hard or loud. I won because I packed that bag and walked out that door and sat on a bench in a bus station on the worst night of my life and let a stranger be kind to me. I won because I stopped smiling through things that were breaking me. I won because I stopped believing that love required me to disappear. If you are sitting somewhere tonight feeling like a burden, feeling like the people who should protect you are the ones taking from you, I need you to hear this. You are not too old. You are not too much. You are not in the way. You are the one holding the truth they don't want exposed, and the most dangerous thing they ever did was underestimate you. That's the end of Jodie Mitchell's story. If this reached you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've been here from Chapter 1, thank you. See you in the next one.